everyone, welcome back to part 4 of the Book 1 Cozies Club chapter by chapter for Still Knife Painting, the first book in the Paint and Shine mystery series by Cheryl Hollon. I'm Di and this is my audio only reading vlog for this book. Today I will be reading chapters 17 through 21 and sharing my thoughts with you along the way. Due to the nature of this reading vlog, there will be spoilers. So if you haven't read these chapters yet, I suggest that you not listen to this recording until you have. If you would prefer to hear my general thoughts on this book in its entirety, keep an eye out for my Book 1 Cozies Club series First Impressions video, which will be posted sometime after the reading vlogs for this book have commenced. So how is everybody doing this evening? I am doing okay. Today I wasn't feeling very well for most of the day, and it is extremely hot tonight. It's even hotter tonight than it was last night, so I do have the fan on again, and I apologize if you can hear some ambient noise from that, but there's just no getting away from that at this point. So I'm looking forward to seeing another tour in tonight's chapters. We should be over the halfway point at the end. And yeah, I don't have much else to say about the story so far. You pretty much know my thoughts on everything that's happened up until this point anyway. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into chapter 17 right now, and I'll be back with you in a bit. So I just finished chapter 18. I'm a little confused. I did look back, and Austin did tell Miranda about the handshake deal with Dan. But then in chapter 18, Miranda, for whatever reason, says that she told Austin about the handshake deal. See, sometimes reading on an electrical device is not as easy as reading on a physical copy when you do a project like this. So let me look back. Yes, so she says the only one I told was Austin, which is incorrect because Austin was the one that told her. And then later on in the chapter, she kind of insinuates that Austin had told Dan again about Miranda knowing about the handshake deal. But again, it seems like she was the one that told Austin about it. Now, maybe the author had intended for that comment to come from Miranda in chapter 17, but that is not how it played out. Austin was definitely the one that told her about the handshake deal. Unless I'm misunderstanding something, I've read that passage like 3 times. And it's definitely Austin telling Miranda about the handshake deal. So, yeah, I'm a little confused with that. Plus, I could have sworn that early in this book, Miranda had talked about the distillery, or the fact that there was distillery equipment on premises. We know that part of her inheritance stipulates that she has to have a small distillery running, I believe, within a year. But because, see, and this is why I think there was mention of it. Let me know if I'm wrong, because that's way too far back for me to flip back on this electronic copy. But I could have sworn there was mention of the fact that the uncle had distillery equipment on premises, and that he possibly dabbled in making some moonshine himself. But in chapter 17, Miranda definitely is surprised about the fact that her uncle had, run a small batch moonshine business, and that she had no idea that he had done that. So, these are obviously not real big things to get hung up on, I don't think. At this point, I have no idea. I can definitely see these two particular items pointing to Dan possibly being the suspect. But since this is the first real suspect we're kind of pinpointing at the moment, if it ends up being Dan, I'm going to be disappointed. I will tell you that right now, because that just seems like too obvious of a choice. I know when they were standing around waiting to be interviewed by the sheriff, Dan had, had a small conversation with Miranda, where Miranda told him about the stipulation of the inheritance, and he had made a comment about the fact that they would be competitors, and brought up concerns about that. But if Miranda had no idea that her uncle was doing this moonshine business, it seems like a perfectly logical connection to think that Dan might have killed Mrs. Childers because of what Austin said. But he could have just as easily lied about it if there was no documentation. So, yeah. I think the better thing to have done, if Miranda had brought it up, or he thought that Miranda knew about it, would have been to just keep quiet. And if she brought it up, lie about it and just say, do you have any proof or anything like that? I think going to the lengths of killing somebody just because you think they're going to tell somebody something is a lot. But I don't know, we'll see. We haven't hit the 50% mark yet. Like I said, this is our first real suspect that we're kind of singling out at the moment. I'm still going to be very disappointed if he ends up being the culprit, but I do think he's a logical choice for a suspect with this information. One other thing that I had seen in these last two chapters was again the fact that Miranda is putting herself down quite a bit in these two chapters, and I'm not enjoying that at all. I also don't understand why she had made mention to Mrs. Hobbs' granddaughters about Doris Ann and not knowing whether she's helping or hurting. Why would she say something like that to them? I don't know the reasoning for it. And the girls were really just there to cook for her. So why make a comment like that, especially being the first time that she's met them? So I thought that was kind of odd as well. But anyway, I am curious about what just happened at the farmhouse. I'm curious about Austin's sister, who is now interviewing Miranda about what had happened. I do kind of find it interesting that we're 40-something% into this book, and really only 2 days have passed. I don't often see timestamps in my cozy mysteries, telling me what day it is and a relative time of day. So I do find it kind of interesting that we're seeing, Saturday morning right after the chapter number, or, Sunday afternoon, Monday morning. I did definitely enjoy this tour that she had much better. Obviously, it went a lot smoother, and it looks like she's going to be doing this daily, or that's her schedule for the moment. So I'm interested to see how that continues as well. But I am going to stop chattering now, and I'm going to dive into chapter 19, and probably won't be back with you until I finish chapter 21. So I'll be back with you in a bit. So I just finished chapter 21. The inconsistencies in these last few chapters has been very confusing for me. I also went back to check about the distillery issue that I had mentioned earlier, and they never did say that he had distillery equipment, but it was me jumping to the conclusion that he did have distillery equipment, because there's this scene where she goes down into the cellar to pull some moonshine from her stash, but then it also says that it's from the containers that her uncle had left behind, and that's where I had made the connection that I thought he had distillery equipment. But still, in that same chapter where they were talking about her going into the cellar and grabbing the containers in case Dan didn't show up, they were talking about how, she was trying to get the loans for the equipment to start her own distillery. So all of these little things are making me confused, and I don't think that they have any real importance on the case in general, but just as part of the storytelling, it's bothering me a lot, because I'm starting to second guess stuff that I have read already in the story, and I'm stopping a lot and saying, wait a minute, didn't something about this come up earlier in this book? And so I'm having to go back and look, and it's not making this read any more enjoyable for me. I do find it interesting that we jumped to the sheriff's point of view in this last chapter. I'm not surprised that this feud between him and the deputy has caused this kind of rift in this case. I am glad that the sheriff had told the deputy that, he was going to report the fact that the deputy was being uncooperative with his request to reinvestigate as a murder. And I definitely do hope that the sheriff ends up being the one to find the culprit in this mystery. I enjoy his relationship with his wife. I find their dynamic to be interesting. But at the same time, there are a lot of things that I'm not enjoying about this book. Like I had mentioned, with all of the inconsistencies in this story, and then more of Miranda's investigating was going on with her questioning of Mrs. Hobb, and I found that to be not very suave. And again, very much like an interrogation and not conversation. I also feel like we're getting a lot of information that's unnecessary, like the whole story that Austen had told her about the little boy who was using baby rattlesnakes to fish with. I don't know what that story has any relevance to do with what's going on in these chapters, unless something's gonna come up later with the fact that maybe the killer had taken that other road by the creek. Maybe the killer got bit by a rattlesnake. I don't know. But that's the only thing I can think of, is that back road has something to do with how the killer got up to her house. So, yeah. Anyway, this particular installment of chapter by chapter, I can see is already very, very long. I don't think I've talked this much about a selection at all. And even though I'm not really enjoying a lot in this one, I'm still wanting to come back to this book, unlike with last month's chapter by chapter. With that one, there were a lot of things that I wasn't interested in, and even though I didn't particularly have any feelings about our main character in that one, there was nothing bringing me back to that story. I had no interest in what was going on. But in this one, I have an interest in what's going on. I do want to see where this one goes. I want to see the sheriff kick the deputy's butt. That's going to be entertaining for me, I think. But I do want to see, what the end result of the story is going to be. And I do find her tours, or the descriptions of her tours, interesting. And I'd like to see where her business goes. But there are so many things about this one that bother me. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about tonight's chapters. Let me know what your thoughts were on these chapters. Did you pick up on the inconsistencies? Are those inconsistencies bothering you? And what do you think of the confrontation between the sheriff and the deputy? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget, you can also come talk to me on Discord or in the Mystery Madness Goodreads group about this selection. I will be back with you tomorrow for chapters 22 through 26, and that will do it for me today. So I hope you're all doing great. I hope you're all having an amazing evening, and I will chat with you later. Bye.